Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, ma'am. Good morning to all.
ma'am.
Good morning, Jayanti. Dr.
Good
Gill is
morning,
here.
all. Will ma'am join?
I don't know. I can't see.
I told her to join 10:50. Why unnecessarily?
Yeah. Actually, just I was able to log in just now. It was taking some time. I don't know for what reason, but well, doesn't matter.
Yes. Mail also faced some problem, but students joined easily. I don't know.
Yeah, I had logged in at the time specified, but it was taking some time. But doesn't matter. It's okay.
Yes, I started 10:20, ma'am. Isika joined first. Isika joined.
Okay, good. Good morning, girls, all of you.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning,
morning,
Upema.
ma'am.
Good morning.
Isika shared the PPT.
Morning, ma'am.
Good morning.
Aishwarya, please share the PPT.
I'm not the co-host.
The rules.
Ma'am, I'm not the co-host, so I won't be able to share the
No,
PPT.
I'm making you. Yes. Now you can share.
What is this PPT regarding? Okay, the instructions for the participants.
Instructions and all.
Okay. Has Dr. Gill joined? I can't.
No, ma'am. She has not joined. I think she will lie because I said 10:50. I think she will join by 10:50
Maybe.
because there is no point keep on waiting her. Because
Absolutely. Yeah, I get it. How many students from our first years, Jayanti?
students are not. I think total number of participants till now 62.
Yeah, I could see that because I'm not very familiar with the first years since I don't teach them. Though I'm in the
Since
group.
it's very difficult, ma'am. I think other college students maybe join.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
and since it is a Zoom link of college, I think we can admit 500 students.
Yeah, that's great. Do you need to call Dr. Gill?
No, ma'am, not because I had given her time 10:50. So around maybe 10:50 you can call her.
No,
Yes, she
then
does.
she'll join.
Okay.
She'll join straight. I mean, at that time.
I have sent the link twice to her.
Yeah. No worries. Okay.
Yes.
Morning,
Lagna
Dr.
Hello, Sudhnya.
Hi. Good
Hello,
morning.
good morning.
Good
All
morning.
good. Good morning, Prerna ji. Good
Good
morning.
And good morning, Dr. Prerna Sinha also. I think who's joined in from English Department ARSD.
Yes.
You're on mute. Can't
Uh,
hear. Yeah, now we can. No, you're on mute, Prerna.
uh,
Good morning. Good morning. Uh, can't hear.
This topic is going to be very interesting.
uh, can
Now
you
you
hear me?
Yeah,
Can you
now,
hear me?
now we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah,
morning.
really looking forward to the session.
Yes.
Have great hopes of refreshing our journey of Greek and Roman mythology.
I know. And when it is I mean, I call her Jitu.
Yeah.
When it's Jitu, then
Yeah.
well.
And I'm sure she's going to be really interesting, and maybe a lot will be added to my
Yes.
own knowledge and information.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like calling her Dr. Gill becomes a little difficult. I'm so used to calling her Jitu.
Yeah.
So that's what.
Okay. So she'll be joining in a little while, right?
In another 5-7 minutes, I think.
Okay. No problem. Yeah.
Good morning, Sulagna. Good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. I can see Falguni. Yes, Falguni, good morning.
Good morning, ma'am.
Taru. Good morning. Good morning, Taru. Now the weather has started becoming hot, like June is in Delhi. No, now it has. April, May were good.
Well, how are you? Well, can you hear me?
Yes,
Where
ma'am.
you-
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Tell me, ma'am.
How are you?
Yes, I am good, ma'am. Tell me, ma'am.
Good, good,
No. Congratulations for the program you have arranged.
Definitely.
To Sulagna and Upendra also.
Yeah.
But most of the thing you only have done, ma'am. All the arrangements and making this Zoom link, sending email to a speaker, and all those things you have only done.
Sudhya ma'am, now you can call maybe Dr. Gill. Yes, tell her to.
You wait till the time that you've given her.
Okay, we'll wait.
Yeah.
I think Himansu ma'am has not joined. But she
Uh,
has joined. Vidya ma'am, Gil ma'am has joined. Good
Yes,
morning, ma'am.
Ma'am has joined.
Good
Yes.
morning. Good morning, Jayanti. Good morning, Veer.
Good
Good morning,
morning.
ma'am.
Good morning, Sudhnya.
I was telling somebody, I said, I'm not used to calling you Dr. Gill.
Huh?
So call you Jitu.
You don't even need to. It's just that my camera is sort of pretty awful. Let me just log in again because I have to connect it again. Let me just log in again.
Okay, so should some of us, turn off our cameras? Would that help?
No. It's just that it's not a very good quality camera. Something has happened to it. So let
Okay.
me just get back again. Hello, Jayanti. If you could allow me to become a host, let me see if I can share the information that I have to.
Okay, ma'am. I'll do that.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Now I have made you
All right.
host.
Thank you. Let me see.
Some students, they have already shared a PPT. So maybe that will be so should I tell them to stop?
Okay, I'll just send it to you because just a minute. Just give me 1 second, please.
Jayanti ma'am, should I start with the instructions for the participants?
Just wait. Just wait. Yes, you can start
I think
about
Jitu
the
is going
role.
to share a PPT. Na, Jayanti, I think maybe the students can wait for some time.
You will send to my mail. So let's see, ma'am.
Okay.
अरे जयंती,
Yes, ma'am.
वो जो दूसरा वाला पहले वाला में जिसमें हो रहा था ना, उसमें एकदम नहीं हो रहा है। 2-3 बार ट्राई किया। अब भी जो उन्होंने ग्रुप में डाला उसको और एक बार डाल दोगे सबके ग्रुप में, क्योंकि पहले वाला जो दिया है उसमें तो हो नहीं रहा है। जो पहले हम लोग दिया था ना उसके साथ पोस्टर के साथ, तो उसमें नहीं हो रहा है। मैं
वो
कितना
शायद
ट्राई
आपने वो रजिस्ट्रेशन लिंक तो क्लिक नहीं कर रहे थे।
नहीं मैंने जूम किया। जूम में वो पूरा आ रहा था, सारा यूएस उसका सारा लिस्ट आ रहा था और कुछ नहीं आ रहा था। फिर मैंने अभी देखा जो वेल ने जो सॉरी अभी जो ग्रुप में बच्चों को डाला है छोटा सा वाला, उसमें तो फटाफट हो गया। हो सकता है कि उसको कोई ट्राई कर रहे होंगे।
अच्छा, ठीक है, मैं समझ गई।
हाँ,
या,
जैसे गार्गी के बच्चे बोल रहे थे ना, रेखा बोल रही थी कि आ सकता है कि नहीं, तो ए वाला हमारा उसमें डाल दो ना। रेखा बोल रही थी ना मेरे बच्चे थोड़ा ज्वाइन कर सकेंगे कि नहीं, तो जो नया वाला जो जूम लिंक है उसको
ठीक है मैम, आई एम डूइंग।
हाँ सुधनिया,
Yes, बोल.
तो ये 100 से ज्यादा में बंद तो नहीं होगा क्योंकि 98 ऑलरेडी है.
This is college का ना.
अच्छा उसमें तो चलेगा
So
ना.
500 students can come, not a problem.
Yes,
क्योंकि
ma'am.
मैं 98 देखा अभी हो गया है.
Yes, ma'am. It's a college link.
अच्छा अच्छा
So
ठीक है.
not a problem at all.
Yes.
ठीक है.
Jayanti, I've sent you a document, and this is for sharing with everyone. It's a
Yes,
list
ma'am,
of
I'll do.
Greek gods and pictures.
I'll just.
Yeah.
Sika, you can start the program. Meanwhile, I'll just share the PPT.
जयंती अभी 9 अभी तो है 10 मिनट रुक जा थोड़ा 10 मिनट कोई ज्वाइन करेंगे शायद. अभी तो 10:40
Ma'am,
हुआ है.
ये Tessie is going to read the rules.
अच्छा हाँ then ठीक है.
Divyani, go on.
Yes. Very good morning to everyone today. I, Devyani Roy, welcome you all here. Today's webinar, held by the Department of Philosophy, Janki Devi Memorial College, University of Delhi, presents the lecture program on an overview of Greek and Roman mythology by Dr. Jitendra Gill. I will now present the rules and instructions that the participants are requested to follow throughout the webinar. Please keep your microphone off. You may keep your video on. Remember, your video is visible to others. If at any point of the session you get disconnected for some reason, please rejoin the session by using the same meeting link. Please type your questions in the chat box for attendance purposes and e-certificate. Please write your name, institution, and email ID in the chat box. Fill the Google form for attendance. The link will be mentioned in the chat box. Type your name and institution as they should appear on your certificate. We request participants not to raise queries about the attendance while the speakers are presenting. Filling of attendance form will be resumed after the question answer session. I would now like to call Ishika Mishra to present a token of thanks to our principal, Dr. Swati Pal, followed by Professor Vel Murugan to welcome our speaker, Dr. Jitendra Gill.
We can start at 11 o'clock, Divya, as a Devyani. We will wait for 10 more minutes.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Ma'am, you are on mute.
Sorry. Yeah. I hope, Jitu, that's all right with you if we wait for 10 minutes? Because some of our colleagues, Jayanti and Vail have shared the link on our philosophy group. So I think some of those students may join from other colleges.
Absolutely, Sudhya, not a problem. We can wait for, 5
Yes.
past 11.
Yes.
That's not an issue at all.
Okay, fine.
So, ma'am,
Thanks.
we'll wait till 11 because
Yeah.
it's now 10:52. Ma'am, can
Yeah.
you see the screen I have shared?
Yeah, I can.
Yes,
Fine.
yeah,
It's visible.
yeah, it is. Because it will be better later if we have the full screen, the slides. Once I start discussing the gods, it will be good to have
Okay,
it.
ma'am, that will do. That I'll do.
Thank you.
जयंती, सुदनिया,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
हाँ, ये जो कॉलेज की जूम होता है वो कॉलेज की तरफ से कोई वो कर रहा है, मतलब ऑपरेट कर रहा है, वो हमें दे दिया है?
नहीं मैम, एक्चुअली वो जूम लिंक मैंने सुरेंद्र जी से मांगा था, तो ही सेड अभी हम लोग का योगा वाला 1 मंथ वाला चल रहा है ना,
हाँ
तो
हाँ,
दे हैव गिवन मी 1 मंथ। तो
अच्छा अच्छा
उसी से वो बोले टाइम स्लॉट अगर अवेलेबल होगा उसी का लिंक से आप कर लीजिए।
अच्छा अच्छा, नहीं नहीं, मैं
उसी
पूछ रही थी इनके कॉलेज की तरफ से कोई हैंडल कर रहा है तो थैंक्स में वो बता देना उनको।
नहीं, ऐसे
सुरेंद्र
भी थैंक्स में तो देना है कॉलेज तो हमेशा, बट वो तो अभी मुझे ही दे दिए, उसी लिंक से मैं कर रही हूँ।
अच्छा अच्छा, ठीक है ठीक। मैंने सोचा शायद वहां से कोई उसको चेक, मतलब वहां से कोई देख रहा है, ऐसे कुछ, ऐसे तो कोई नहीं है
नहीं
ना?
नहीं मैम, नहीं मैम, नहीं
शिपू तो पूछ लिया था, प्रिंसिपल को अभी तो बुलाने की जरूरत नहीं।
नहीं, प्रिंसिपल मैम नहीं आएंगे ना, शी सेड
हाँ,
दैट
रेखा
he
ने
has
ज्वाइन
some
किया है।
Yeah,
meeting, he has some meeting.
हाँ,
yeah, she has. Rekha has joined in. I think another 2 minutes, Jayanti, then maybe we can start.
Yes ma'am, 57
Yeah,
work.
hi.
हाय
Yeah.
रेखा।
Good morning ma'am.
Hi. Hi.
Good morning, everyone.
Yes, ma'am. Welcome you, ma'am.
Good
Thank
morning.
you. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, Rekha.
Hi, Sonia. How are you?
I'm fine.
एक्चुअली यू आर ऑल्सो एक्सपर्ट इन ग्रीक फिलोसफी ना रेखा, तो अच्छी बात है।
Expert तो पता नहीं, but yeah, I have been teaching it
सो
for a while.
स्पेसिफिकली फर्स्ट ईयर्स के लिए कि दिमाग में रख के डालो है ना?
Yeah, हाँ, इसलिए मैंने भेज दिया था, but they are probably having their G class.
हाँ
So,
हाँ,
हाँ.
वो जो क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग रेखा, वो कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं आया था, फाइनली आ गया था ना?
I have no idea because I'm not teaching it, so मैंने इतना ध्यान नहीं
ग्रुप
दिया.
में आया था ना कि क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग का पेपर नहीं पहुंचा है।
हाँ, okay, I don't know. मैंने ध्यान नहीं दिया.
आज तो थर्ड ईयर की रिलीजन है, बीए प्रोग्राम की फिलोसफी रिलीजन है।
Okay, okay, okay.
Hello.
Hi.
Good morning Nivedita ji. Good morning.
Hello, Jayanti. Yes.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Nivedita. Good morning.
Good morning. All the best.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Nivedita.
बैठो मैं
निवेदिता बाहर कॉलेज में हो क्या अभी?
एक मिनट बैठो।
निवेदिता कॉलेज में हो क्या अभी?
हाँ मैं कॉलेज में हूँ।
हाँ तो इसीलिए आपने मास्क लगाए हो।
हाँ जी हाँ जी
हाँ
हाँ।
नहीं नहीं पूरा लगा के रखिए।
कॉलेज में हूँ। हाँ एटलीस्ट एक मास्क तो लगा के रखते हैं, फिर से डबल होता है, लेकिन रूम में बैठती हूँ तो मैं एक तो लगती हूँ।
तो अभी लाइब्रेरी हर रोज खुला
अच्छा
है?
मैं एक मिनट वीडियो ऑफ कर रही हूँ काम। हाँ दिस वीक फ्रॉम दिस वीक।
Now we can start the program. It's
Yeah.
10:59.
Yeah.
Start the program.
Let's start. Let's start. Yeah.
Devyani, please start.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, start.
A very good morning, everyone. Today, I, Devyani Roy, welcome you all here. Today's webinar held by the Department of Philosophy, Janki Devi Memorial College, University of Delhi presents the lecture program on an overview of Greek and Roman mythology by Dr. Jitendra Gill. I will now present the rules and instructions that the new participants are requested to follow throughout the webinar. Please keep your microphone off. You may keep your video on. Remember that your video is visible to others. If at any point of the session you get disconnected for some reason, please rejoin the session by using the same meeting link. Please type your questions in the chat box. For attendance purposes and e-certificate, please write your name, institution, and email ID in the chat box. Fill the Google form for attendance. The link will be mentioned in the chat box. Type your name and institution as they should appear on the certificate. We request participants not to raise questions about the attendance while the speakers are presenting. Filling of attendance form will be resumed after the question answer session. I would now like to call Ishika Mishra to present a token of thanks to our principal, Dr. Swati Pal, followed by Professor Vel Murugan to welcome our speaker, Dr. Jitendra Gill. Over to you, Ishika.
Ishika?
Thank you, Devani. It is a pleasure for me to have been given the opportunity to extend a collective gratitude to our beloved principal, Professor Swati Pal. She could not join us today, but she has sent her warm blessings for today's event. Professor Pal's encouraging attitude towards our department is something we are eternally grateful for. And had she joined us today, she'd have showered us with her supportive words, I'm sure. But since she is not here, I'll now request Vailsa to take over and introduce our honorable speaker of the day. Thank you.
I actually am here. So I sent a message to your TIC saying that I'm joining, and I have joined, but perhaps.
Good morning, ma'am. Sorry.
No problems. No problems.
Good morning, Professor Pal. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. I joined at sharp 11 while the instructions were.
Good morning, Professor Paul.
While the instructions were being read, I had joined. I managed to join, and anyway, please carry on.
I'm requesting you to say a few words to the gathering.
Thank you very much, Jayanti. I have actually very few words to say because the person who is going to be speaking today is my very dear colleague, Dr. Jitendra Gill, whose passion for classical literature is something that I am only too well acquainted with, having been her colleague for the last 26 years now. And I know that it is such an experience listening to her vast reservoir of knowledge, regarding this. And I can only pray that I'm able to stay on for her talk. And once again, listen to her as I have, with the kind of, passion that she exudes, the kind of knowledge that she has, the depth of knowledge that she has. Every time listening to her is an experience. So I know that the audience out here, and there are a large number as I can see, is going to profit immensely from her talk. So I wish you all a meaningful session, and I congratulate, as always, the philosophy department for taking this initiative to organize a talk like this. So good luck to you. Hope you have a very meaningful session. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for your encouraging words. You are always supportive to give us support to do extra curricular activities, co-curricular activities. We are really thankful to you, ma'am, for your support and encouragement. Over to
Thank you, Professor Pal. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. It is an honor and a privilege to introduce our speaker today, who is going to talk on an overview of Greek and Roman mythologies. Dr. Jitendra Gill is an associate professor at Department of English, Janak Devi Memorial College, University of Delhi. Her area of specializations are 19th century British literature and culture, comparative mythologies, and popular culture. Dr. Gill was a Fulbright visiting scholar from 2010 to 2011 at Pittsburgh College, United States of America. And Gill is one of the best and senior most teacher in our college. Students like her method of teaching, what you call the pedagogy, very much. And also she is very familiar with the students community as well as faculty. With this short note, we the philosophy department warmly welcome ma'am to deliver a talk on this topic. Over to you, ma'am.
Vale, before Dr. Gill takes over, I would like to add that Dr. Gill is also the director of the IQAC JDMC Research Center. So she is a person who is academically extremely involved in all that goes on in college. She has been our NAC coordinator and is our IQAC mentor for I don't know how many years now. So she is a person who really believes in quality education, and we as a college are indebted to her. I would like to record that in today's session.
Yes,
Thank you.
Sure, ma'am. Thank you. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Pal and Vale, for this extremely embarrassingly fulsome introduction. I hope I deserve it. And I'm going to be talking about something that is very close to my heart. This is something I've taught for a long time, and I truly enjoy studying this particular subject. If there are any questions, please feel free to interrupt me in the middle, because I may assume knowledge on the part of philosophy students, which they may not actually have. And there is also a drawback to my kind of presentation because I am familiar with teaching literature students. So I may not be able to give you the kind of information that you require from the philosophical perspective. So please feel free to stop me at any moment. I'll try my best to respond to your questions. So without much delay, let me just get back to the subject under discussion. Greek and Roman mythology, actually, the reason why I've combined the two together is, this is something I'm going to be repeating pretty frequently. Roman mythology is derivative. It derives very heavily from Greek mythology. So I'll discuss that in detail later. So even when I keep talking about Greek mythology, please include the Roman mythology in it, because Romans were heavily influenced by the Greeks. So before we actually start this discussion on the myths, Roman and Greek myths and their gods, I would like to clarify a few things, because these are first-year students, and therefore certain points need to be made clear to them at the outset. We need to be clear about the fact that the ancient religion of classical period in Greece and Rome does not really, it is not followed by Greeks and Romans now. Modern day Greeks and Romans do not follow the religion of their ancestors anymore. They converted to Christianity more than 17 centuries ago and abandoned the religion of their ancestors. So why are we reading this, and how do we learn about the gods of classical Greece and Rome? The source of our knowledge is really myths. And before we discuss the myths, I would just briefly like to talk about exactly what myths mean. The term myth derives from mythos, which means a tale or a story in Greek, in classical Greek, that is. Myths are oral in origin, which means that myths came into existence before the society concerned actually learned how to read and write their language. And what that means also is that oral narratives are fluid. And there are multiple versions of these oral narratives available in different parts of Greece and Rome, Roman Empire. For example, if we were to talk about the birth of Zeus, the most important god of Greek mythology, there will be different stories about the birth of Zeus in, say, Sparta, or in Mycenae, they may think of it differently. In Thebes, they may interpret the story differently because oral myths are transmitted verbally from generation to generation. And think of it this way, that if I were to tell you a story, 5 of you are listening to a story being told by me. Each of you may understand certain aspect of the story differently according to your interpretation. And then you tell the story to 2 people, you will be possibly forgetting certain things that I mentioned and possibly reinterpreting them. Therefore, oral dissemination of any narrative is never fixed. It changes from generation to generation, and it changes from time to time and place to place. So myths are actually a very rich source of information of all ancient cultures and literatures. And I'll come back to that later. Let me just briefly explain exactly what I mean by mythology. Anthropologists define mythology as a body of interconnected myths or stories told by a specific cultural group to explain the world consistent with their experience of this world, of the world in which they live. So myths can be of different kinds. Myths can be originary. These are myths that explain how this particular culture interpreted the origins of any phenomenon. For example, in the Bible, we have the book of Genesis talking about how the world was born, which is given according to the perspective of Judaism. And of course, Islam as well as Christianity. We have the story of Noah's Ark, which is also one of the originary myths. In Hinduism, we have the story of how the deluge, Pralay, happened and how the world was born again. Similarly, Greek and Roman mythology also have similar stories. In fact, I would suggest that you read Metamorphoses by Ovid, who was a Roman writer of the 1st century CE, who compiled a whole collection of myths in this book. And some of the most significant stories in the Metamorphoses are originary myths. They talk about the origins of the world as the Romans knew it. And they also talk about the origins of various rituals that they followed in religion. That is the second kind of myth. And the third kind of myth, there are multiple varieties, but I'm just giving you the 3 broad categories, are historical myths. Now, rituals, for example, if I were to give an example from India, Hinduism, for instance, we could actually discuss exactly how the Saptapadi in the marriage rituals of Hinduism came into existence. What is the significance of Panigrahan in the marriage rituals? All of these stories are narrated to us. All these rituals can be explained to us by the use of myths. And the third set of myths are historical myths. Ramayana and Mahabharata would come under that category. So would the Iliad and the Odyssey, as well as the Aeneid. I'll come back to this point pretty often in the course of my discussion. So the next thing I would like to mention is that there are multiple myths about the origins of Greek gods. And none of us can say that this is the right version, that is the original version, and this is the derivative version. We can't really say that. Because myths predate writing and originate in different parts of the country, they are considered to be true by those people. So you're likely to find a lot of different stories about these gods, all of which are accepted. So we can't say that the story of Zeus being born by ripping out his father's stomach and jumping out and declaring himself to be the king of gods is incorrect, is not incorrect. Because there is another story in which we are told that Rhea, his mother, protected her child from being swallowed by his father by replacing the child with a stone. And the father, by mistake, swallowed that stone while Zeus was being brought up by the goat Amalthea in a cave far away from this region. Both of these are myths about the origins of Zeus, and we accept both of them. So why are we discussing Greek and Roman myths today? Is because they have an enormous influence on Western thought, literature, and philosophy. If you read English, French, Italian, German, or any other European literature, you will see the influence of Greek and Roman literature on them, Greek and Roman myths on them. The whole of Western philosophy is based, in a sense, on Greek philosophers. So we see Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and the Romans constantly refer to Greek myths. The influence of Greek myths is not restricted just to literature, philosophy, history, or art. It can also be seen in psychology that came into existence as a formal discipline at the beginning of 20th century. A lot of stuff that Freud, the father of psychology, talks about derives from Greek mythology. In fact, the name of this discipline, psychology, comes from a Greek term, psyche, which used to refer to the soul or spirit in ancient Greece. We have terms like Oedipus complex being used. We talk about Electra complex. We talk about narcissism. We talk about Thanatos. All of these are, to name a few of the terms that are used in psychology, they all derive from Greek myths. And if you want, we can talk about them at a later stage once I've finished the broad discussion of the Greek myths. So what are the Greek myths all about, and what are the origins of Greek gods? To understand this, I will briefly talk about the origins of ancient cultures. All ancient cultures were primarily dependent on agriculture. So a farmer is dependent on rains that fall from sky, the warmth of sun, the fertility of land, forest fire, the destructive potential of forest fires, storms, and lightning. The survival of a whole community depends on the benign presence of all these natural phenomena or the elements. Like most cultures in existence at this time, Greeks too converted these natural phenomena or these natural elements into gods. Originally, Greeks too must have had formless gods, like the Hindus during the Rigvedic times. When there were no temples, yajna was performed in open spaces so that the smoke of the holy fire could reach up to the sky and be accepted by the gods. So like the Egyptians, Babylonians, Indians, Chinese, the Greeks too converted these natural phenomena into gods. This is the basis of the Greek notion, conception of divinity. So because ancient societies were pastoral and therefore dependent for survival on all these things, they decided to pray to them because people realized how little control they had over their lives and over these forces. It is these powerful forces, unknown powerful forces, that control their lives. So what does one do under these circumstances? You try to keep the powerful forces happy by prayers and gifts and hope for the best. So, like most of the other ancient cultures, Greeks too worshipped gods who were embodiments of natural phenomena and the elements. So, just the way in Rig Vedic times you have the worship of Agni, one of the elements, earth, air, water, ether. Similarly, the Greeks also converted these natural phenomena into gods. Now, when we talk about Greek gods, we are really talking about one particular set of gods who are known as the Olympians because they were supposed to inhabit Mount Olympus. They're actually the younger gods. Originally, there was chaos. Then, five other forces came into existence, according to Greek originary myths. These forces were Gaia, earth, there was Erebus, the underworld, there was darkness of the underworld, there was darkness of night, and I think there was sleep. And it is these forces that basically gave birth to the next set of forces, of powers, of gods, so to say, which were the Titans. But we are primarily, most of the literature, philosophy, history, and art of Greece is concerned really about the Olympian gods. So we are going to focus on them. And by the way, the Olympian gods also were descended from two Titans whose name were Kronos and Rhea. And the chief among all Olympians is Zeus, who basically castrated his father, Kronos, and jumped out, followed by his siblings who had been swallowed by their father earlier, immediately after their birth. Because there had been a prophecy made about any children born to Rhea, that any child born to her may pose a threat to their father. So what the father did was that he would swallow the children as they were born, and the children continued to grow inside his belly. And Zeus was supposed to be the youngest of them. According to a myth that is told by Homer, he was swallowed by his father. He was the youngest of his siblings. He ripped out his father's stomach and jumped out, followed by his other siblings. So the youngest of the siblings became the eldest because he jumped out first. Because then these siblings had a fight. There were three brothers and a sister. The three brothers basically argued about who is going to be the prime mover, who's going to be the most important god. So Zeus said that since I was the one who rescued you, I will be the god of the sky. I'll be the god of rain, thunder, and lightning. This next brother, Poseidon, Neptune as he's called by Romans, became the god of the sea. God of sea is very important for Greeks because if you remember the geography of Greece, you will know that Greece is actually surrounded by the sea. There is the Ionian Sea on one side, there's the Aegean Sea on the other side, and at the bottom there is the Mediterranean Sea. Greece is actually a collection of islands. So this sea plays a very, very significant role in their lives. So the sea god was a powerful god for them. And the third brother, Hades, became the god of the underworld. And Homer tells us that earth was shared inclusively by all three of them. So they all controlled the earth, but they controlled a different sphere of the universe as their kingdom. But Zeus became the most important, most powerful of these gods. And then he got married to Hera, his sister and wife, and then were born a whole range of Olympian gods about whom we will discuss later. So, since I'm going to be focusing on the Greek gods, Olympian gods primarily, it is believed in Greek literature that a writer called Hesiod, who is a contemporary of Homer, both of whom used to live in 8th centuries BCE, that is about 2800 to 2900 years ago. Hesiod, in one of his books called the Theogony, which really talks about the origins of Greek gods, is supposed to have given the Greek gods a physical shape. Earlier, they were formless beings, what we call Nirakar. He gave them this human form, which is going to be very important for our discussion today. And Homer also talks about the gods as if, they were his best friends or neighbors or people that he knew intimately. This is one of the most interesting aspects of Greek gods. So Greek gods, the way we know them, Olympian gods, were made accessible to the Greeks as well as to people like us almost 3,000 years later through the works of Homer, the Iliad and Odyssey, and playwrights like Aeschylus, Sophocles, Euripides, Aristophanes. Each of them talks about these gods. So do the philosophers. Plato, through Socrates, talks about the same gods and the same belief system, religious system, as does Aristotle. So we are going to be discussing the role performed by these gods in the lives of Greeks and what were the, you can say, avenues which they controlled. Really speaking, Greek gods are omnipotent, omnipresent, omniscient. They control every aspect of human life. The fates are supposed to control your birth, your death, and how long and how you will live. The fates are actually pre-Olympian. In fact, some people say that they go beyond the Titans. They are generally presented as three weavers, three old women, Clotho, Lachesis, Atropos. One of them feeds the thread into this loom. The other keeps feeding the thread, and the third one cuts it. So when the thread gets fed into the loom, that is when you're born. And the duration for which the loom spins the thread, you live. And then the thread is cut, you die. So from your birth to death, and even thereafter, your lives are controlled by gods. In fact, Greek gods have this unique capacity for which they are sort of fascinating. If you read if you read Homer's Iliad, for instance, Greek gods are not just they don't just control your life, birth, death. They don't just control your sickness and disease, they also control your mind. For example, in one of the early books of the Iliad, Agamemnon, the king, the commander of Greek armies, needs to be taught a lesson because he's become too arrogant. So it is decided that he needs to be taught a lesson. So what does Zeus do? Zeus sends him a false dream to misguide him. So the Greek gods control the mind. They can appear as human beings. They can adopt the disguise of a human being, appear in person in front of you, and tell you and physically support you to do whatever is it that you're doing if they are helpful. And if they don't like you, then they can appear in the person of another human being and actually lead you to your death, the way Athena, the goddess, does in the case of Hector, the great Trojan hero, who is going to be killed ostensibly by the great Greek hero Achilles, but really speaking, because of the intervention of Athena. So Greek gods are, when I say they are omnipresent, they are present not just physically in this world, they're not just overseeing everything that you do in life, they also take over your mind. They're omnipotent because they control everything. And they're omniscient because they know the past, present, and future. We will come back to that very soon. So if we could just take a look at the list of the Greek gods, Jayanti, may I request you to enlarge the list of Greek gods and the pictures that we have. Jayanti? Yes, please. Could you please make it, share it as the central frame of the screen? It'll be easier for everyone to see it.
Yes, ma'am, I'm doing. I'm just.
Okay.
Is it fine, ma'am?
Can we have it as the focus rather than focusing on me? I would prefer to focus on this particular document.
Is it fine, ma'am, right now?
I can't really see it still. I think you may have to ask the others because I have my own version of the document. If you could move the cursor to the first document, which provides the list of Greek and Roman gods. Correct. That is. Thank you. Yeah. I hope all of you can see this. So we have, this is just a kind of selective list of some of the most important Greek gods. Zeus is the Greek name. Jupiter or Jove is what the Romans called him. He is the king of all gods. He's also the father of many of them. He's the god of wealth. He's the god of suppliants. He's the god of hospitality. He pretty much controls everything in the Greek world. He is married to Hera, who was known as Juno, who was the goddess of Juno was the term used by Romans to describe Hera. She was the goddess of marriage. Now, there is a slight difference in the way Romans and Greeks perceive these gods. Zeus retained his supremacy, even for Romans, because Jupiter was the most important god, and there used to be a huge temple of Jupiter in the heart of Rome. Hera is generally not presented in a very positive light in Greek literature. She's invariably presented as a shrewish wife. She's a quarrelsome wife, and Zeus and Hera always fight. I'll come back to their relationship when I move to the next point. At present, I'm just introducing the gods. But for Romans, Juno acquired a lot more importance because
Ma'am, you are not audible.
Jayanti, could you call Dr. Gill and tell her that she's not audible?
Yes, I'm calling, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, Dil ma'am will join. उनके यहाँ electricity नहीं है, so she will join within 2 minutes. Yes, ma'am. You are muted. Ma'am, you are muted.
Yes, yes, I've unmuted. So let me just go back to where we were. So thank you very much for waiting patiently. I'm sorry about this internet issue. I hope all of you can hear me now. So we have Zeus as the chief god, who retains his supremacy even in Roman times. Then we have Hera, whose status changes in Roman society. Because Romans gave a lot of importance to motherhood, therefore Juno's attained a lot of significance there, and many a temple were constructed in her honor. The third most important, I would not call him most important, he's definitely one of the trinity of three powerful gods, that is Poseidon, who was known as Neptune. If you look at the pictures of the gods I've attached to this particular document, you will see that Neptune is always seen with a trident in his hand, a trident which looks like almost the Trishul of Hindu mythology that Lord Shiva also carries. Why is Neptune important? Because the Roman Empire, which was the greatest empire that the world had seen till the 4th century, came into existence because of, this is Neptune, by the way. And the trident is the mark of his, his particular emblem. And if you move to the preceding page, Jayanti, if we go there, this is Zeus and this is Hera. So, Zeus is generally seen as this middle-aged, very powerful, very strong, regal-looking man. And Hera's pictures can vary according to the interpretation of the sculptor. This is a Roman sculpture. So therefore, she's being shown as this very regal-looking, very powerful-looking woman. So the next god who is very, very powerful is also Hades. Hades is the god of what is called the underworld. And this is obviously the underworld in sense of hell. Now, Greeks, this is something I need to discuss with you because this is very, very important. Greeks did not really have a concept of hell of the kind that Romans developed and which came into existence in Christianity. Hell as a place where evil souls were punished. Greeks did not have that conception. All the Greeks, after their death, became shades, insubstantial, crossed the 4 rivers, Styx, Lethe, etc., and went to the underworld and became shades. That is, they ceased to exist. They had no existence. They lost their identity. They lost their memory. So for Greeks, afterlife was non-existence. It was an identity-less non-existence, something that terrified them so much that they sought immortality during their life. Immortality was something that Greeks yearned for. And they felt that the two ways in which human beings could attain immortality to overcome the identitylessness of Hades was by earning fame. So you become immortal through fame, so you do great deeds. And the other was through your progeny, through your descendants. Because there is this event in that, a scene in the Odyssey, Homer's Odyssey, where Achilles, the great Greek hero, who was considered to be the most powerful of all heroes of all times, and who also died at a very young age, which was his destiny, died and went down to Hades. And Odysseus, it is said that he had chosen this. He had been given a choice. His mother was a goddess. And there was a prophecy that any son born to that goddess would be greater than his father. So Zeus, who is a tricky old character, he got Thetis, the mother of Achilles, married to a human being, a king called Peleus. So Peleus and Thetis had this son called Achilles. All of you have heard Achilles, you've heard about Achilles' tendon also. Thetis, who was a goddess, was immortal. Her husband was immortal. Her son too, her only child, was also immortal. She wanted to make him immortal. What did she do? She's supposed to have dipped her newborn baby into this amphora of nectar to make him immortal. But she held him by his ankles when she dipped him in this pot full of nectar. It is said that the whole body of Achilles became impervious to any weapon except his ankle, because that did not get touched by nectar. So that was the only weak spot in Achilles' body. Apart from that, it is said that Achilles was given the choice of homecoming, successful, victorious homecoming. You know, that he will fight, he'll of course fight in the Battle of Troy. He'll come back safely, but he will earn no renown. So there was this safe homecoming without renown, and there was this great renown with an early death. And it is said that Achilles opted for great renown and early death. In book 13 of the Odyssey, when Odysseus meets Achilles in the underworld after his death, Achilles says that I wish I had not chosen early death, because this existence is existence of identitylessness. You don't have an existence at all. So this is the Greek conception of hell. It is really in the Aeneid that Virgil talks about hell the way Dante is going to define it about 1000 years later, which is going to be also included in Christianity. Hell as a place where evildoers are punished. That is not the conception of hell that Greeks have, at least not as far as Homer is concerned. Then we have another very important goddess whose name is Athena, who is known as Minerva in Latin. She is the goddess of wisdom and she's the goddess of handicraft. She's also very, very clever. She's very controlling. She also interferes in human life all the time. If you read Greek literature, you will come across Athena and her actions very, very often. Apollo and Artemis are twins. Apollo is the sun god, a god who used to be called Hyperion by the Titans. He's the god of sun, he's the god of medicine, he's the god of music and arts. His sister, Artemis, who's also known as Diana in Latin, is the virgin goddess. She's the goddess of moon. She's the huntress. And of course, one of the most important goddesses is Aphrodite, known as Venus, the goddess of love, desire, and beauty. She's married to Hephaestus, who is the blacksmith god. He's also the god of metallurgy. He's the ugly, lame god. So we have the origins of beauty and beast in the Aphrodite-Hephaestus relationship. Aphrodite is the embodiment of beauty, grace, desire. And Hephaestus is the ugly, lame god. And Aphrodite always has, it's a kind of eternal love affair that she has with Ares, who is known as Mars in Latin, the god of war. So beauty and war are combined together. It's a truism in most societies that wars are fought for reasons of greed or love. So Aphrodite and Ares together create that relationship on which a lot of, all is fair in love and war. So love and war tend to get equated very, very often. And the origins of that particular correlation also possibly lies in Greek and Roman mythology. And please, I would like to, at this point, bring to your notice that Ares was almost a kind of ridiculous character in Greek mythology. Of course, Greeks were warlike too, but they gave a lot more importance to culture in the classical age. Ares is an object of ridicule for most gods, as shown by Homer in both of his books. But for Romans, Mars was very, very important because the temper of the Roman civilization was very different from the Greeks. Romans created the greatest empire the world had ever known at that point. Because they gave so much importance to war, Mars became one of the most significant gods of Roman mythology. Then we have Hermes. Hermes in Greek is known as Mercury in Latin. He is the god of messengers, he's the god of travelers, he's the god of thieves, etc. Similarly, we have, I can't really see this. Let me just, okay. Okay. So after Hermes, I can't, yeah. Dionysus. Dionysus is known as Bacchus. He's the god of wine and theater, and he came into existence much later. He was not originally an Olympian god. In fact, in Metamorphoses, Ovid talks about the arrival of Bacchus on the scene, on the divine scene, and how he became a part of one of the important of this pantheon of Greek and Roman gods. Demeter, who's known as Ceres, is very important. She's the goddess of harvest and grain, obviously very significant for any pastoral culture. And the word cereal actually derives from her name. And then I just added one name who is not really a significant goddess. She's the daughter of Demeter. Her name is Persephone in Greek and Proserpina in Latin. She is the wife of Hades. And the reason why I added her here is because there's a very important myth which exists in relation to Proserpina, Demeter, and Hades. The story goes that Persephone was beautiful. Hades one day abducted her. Persephone's mother, Demeter, kept looking for her daughter. And then when she couldn't find her daughter, she started mourning for the loss of a child. And there were no harvests. All the crops shriveled up, and humanity started starving. So all the gods went to Demeter. They said that, you can't do this. We have to think of human beings. How will they survive if you don't nurture the harvest? So she says, I need my daughter. So gods then went to Hades and said that please return Proserpina, that is Persephone, back to her mother. He says, no, I won't do it. But they said then all the humanity would die. So a kind of compromise was reached that for 6 months, Persephone would stay with her mother, and for 6 months, she will stay with her husband in the underworld. This is how the Greeks and Romans described the seasons. So the 6 months for which Persephone is supposed to be with her mother are the seasons when crops grow. And the period when she goes down to Hades to be with her husband, it is winter time. It's so cold that nothing can grow on earth. So myths are always very, very interesting for reasons that they tell us something about how that culture thought. What were their perceptions? How did they believe? What were their beliefs? And how did they come to terms with the forces of nature and uncertainties of life that they used to survive well? So after I have pictures of Greek gods, I hope Jayanti will be able to show them to you, and I will continue further. Jayanti, if you could just go slightly slowly. This is Zeus and Hera. Then we have Poseidon, Neptune. After that, this is Hades. And next to Hades, you will see there is a dog, three-headed dog, who's called Cerberus. He is the watchdog of the underworld. These are sculptures of Ares, the warrior god. You will see the shield and armor that he's wearing, and of course the javelin that he holds. He's followed by Athena. Athena is also a goddess who likes to fight. So you will see her very often holding a shield and javelin and a helmet. Very, very often like that. Then we have Apollo. And Apollo is followed by, it's actually a painting taken from an amphora. It's at least 3,000 years old. And in this painting, we can see Artemis, the huntress, with one of her companions. And the last picture that we have is one of the pictures of Aphrodite, the goddess of love, desire, and beauty. I would like to go back to my discussion on the Greek gods. So one of the important things, as I mentioned earlier about Greek gods, is that originally they used to be formless, nirakar. And then they were given this beautiful human shape. This is how Hesiod, Homer visualized them. And a lot of sculptors created sculptures of gods like this, and painters painted about them. This particular style of image creation of gods is called anthropomorphic. Anthropos in Greek means man, morph comes from shape. So in the shape of man. It's really a kind of, you can say, extreme confidence. It displays extreme confidence of Greeks in their own humanity, that they would actually think of gods to be looking like themselves. Now, the Greek gods don't just look like human beings, they also behave like human beings. If you read Homer, you'll very often come across scenes on Olympus where gods are sitting, having a dinner, cribbing, fighting, laughing, joking, just like any other human family. The relationship between Zeus and Hera is extremely acerbic. It's a kind of, very, very confrontational, conflicted relationship. Hera constantly rejects the dominance of Zeus, and Zeus invariably finds it difficult to control her and tries to punish her. This is how the relationship works out. A lot of these gods that I mentioned are actually children of Zeus. Apollo, Artemis are the children of Zeus with Leto. Athena and Aphrodite are supposed to have been born of Zeus, but they don't ever have mothers. Some myths show them with some mothers who died, but very often they are supposed to be. For example, it is said that Zeus brought Athena, basically nurtured the Athena in his brain. It's very interesting. She's the goddess of wisdom. So she is born of Zeus's brain. And Aphrodite is, as her name tells us, literally Aphrodite means foam born. She was supposed to have been born of the semen of Zeus, and some people say Cronus, as it fell in the sea. Out of this foam, there was this beautiful goddess who was born near the island of Cyprus. And that is the reason why Aphrodite is very often known as the Cyprian goddess, the goddess of Cyprus. So Hephaestus, Apollo, Athena, Artemis, Aphrodite, Hermes, Dionysus, all of these are children and they are the sons and daughters of Zeus. Not by Hera very often, but by various other goddesses. Zeus is also responsible mostly, and sometimes Neptune also, and sometimes Apollo, for as being the procreator of almost all the dynasties of Greek kings. All the heroes in Greek mythology are invariably descended from gods. Just the way in Hindu mythology, in Indian mythology, we know Bhagwan Ram as, Chandravanshi. There are heroes who are Suryavanshis. So just like the Hindu mythology, we have Greek mythology in which gods are actually responsible for giving birth to the dynasties of great heroes. So the anthropomorphism of Greek gods is very significant. Now, the interesting thing about Greek gods, unlike the Hindu gods, is that they are not necessarily very good beings. They're not always kind, they're not always just, they're not always fair. They're very often unfair, arbitrary, capricious, jealous, cruel, hard-hearted, and unjust. Why would the Greek culture show gods to be like this? It tells us something about the bleak worldview of the Greek society. Because the reality of human life is that regardless of how much we try, there are very often times in our lives when we fail, when life feels unjust, when horrible things happen to good people. and bad people flourish. In Hindu mythology, we have this comfortable philosophy, Kali Yug hai. Kali Yug mein aisa hi hota hai. Greeks explained the arbitrary and capricious nature of human life by believing that gods were like that. There are stories in Homeric epics where gods are given fabulously expensive gifts and something in return is sought. For example, Hector prays to Athena, asks his mother to pray to Athena that you will actually sacrifice 12 fertile cows and give the most expensive gifts that you have and dedicate them to Athena, provided Athena blesses the city of Troy and allows it to survive after the Greeks have gone. What does Homer say? Athena accepted the gifts but did not grant them the boon that they sought. So the unfairness of human life, the injustice that is endemic to it, was explained by the Greek society through the gods, who are invariably shown as being arbitrary, capricious, highly volatile, and very unpredictable. So the mythology related to Greek gods actually is a very clear indication of how the Greek society thought, what was their worldview. So in the Iliad, Zeus, the king of gods, is shown like the king of any heroic human society. Gods are very, very human in their relationships, in their arguments, in their fights, in their happiness, in their joys. The only difference between gods and human beings is that gods don't die. Otherwise, they feel and look just like human beings. That is how we describe the anthropomorphism of Greek society. If we have any questions, we can discuss the questions later. Now, the other thing that I would like to say is that the Greeks believed, as I said earlier, in an underworld which was devoid of all the pleasures and sorrows of human existence. The underworld was basically being not existing. There were no joys, there were no sorrows, there was nothing. And what frightened the Greeks most was this nothingness. And this is something, as I mentioned earlier, that Romans did not agree with. And their perception of life after death was dramatically different from the Greeks. I'll be very happy to discuss any points that you raise about any of the issues that we have talked about, because it'll be good for me to get some feedback from you and respond to your questions. Thank you. Yes, please. I think some hands have been raised.
Yes, Dr. Navneet, you can ask the question.
All right. Thank you so much, Dr. Jitendra. It was actually a mesmerizing talk by you. Really got into the Greek mythology. And I come from discipline of philosophy. So I actually want to thank you for literally enlightening me on the points that why I've always wondered that what was Plato's problem with mythologies. So today it stands clarified that probably he was looking into the rationality of the divine rather than the evilness and the capriciousness of all the characters that have been portrayed. So having said that, I would just want to ask you about the recollection factor. Philosophers like Socrates, though he has not written much, I mean, he hardly wrote anything, but what we know of Socrates through Plato, Platonic writings, and through Plato himself, is that both of them placed a lot of importance on recollection of the soul or the psyche. So I was just wondering if there could be some connection between an influence of Roman on them or something else. I mean, if you would know something about it.
Okay. Now, the thing is that Plato and Aristotle, I hope all of you know the relationship between Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, Alexander. Plato uses Socrates as the source of all knowledge. In his dialogue, Socrates is always the master. So Plato was Socrates' student, Aristotle was Plato's student, and Alexander the Great was Aristotle's student. So it's a very, very interesting relationship that exists between them. The thing is that they existed in the 3rd century BCE. Roman society comes into its own only in the 1st century BCE. So Roman society actually, the Roman philosophy, etc., becomes concrete 200 years after Plato and Aristotle have written. So Romans are going to be influenced by Greeks, but possibly Greeks could not be influenced by Romans. And what you said about I think you made some a very interesting point about soul. Could you please repeat that? Because I felt that.
Yeah. No, my point was simply that as you said, that in their mythologies, they have referred to soullessness in that sense, or no memory after as an afterlife thing. And the gods were differentiated from humans only on the aspect that they had some sort of an immortality. So I understand that Plato and Socrates, as you put it rightly, that through Plato, they were trying to project immortality while living, and that is why the insistence was on philosophic wisdom, etc., and not on the progeny or the human progeny as such. My only point is that when we read about these things about immortalizing via the fame, they insist upon recollection through the soul. So I was just wondering whether there was some influence, but then I stand corrected that it couldn't have been an influence of that, or this was just probably an inroad into philosophy. This was just
I think what I could say here is that it is believed that Greeks had to, when they died, they believed that they had to cross the river of forgetfulness, Lethe, before they could enter. And they had to basically, it was a ferry. I'm forgetting the river's name. There are so many of them. There are 4 of them, actually. Styx, Lethe, and okay. Anyway, they had to cross this world to the other through a ferry, which was ferried by a character called Charon. And you have to carry a copper penny. Otherwise, he will not ferry you across. And once you went across, you forgot everything. Your past life ceased to exist. Now, the interest is that you have attained fame, but you die. And your memories are erased. So you lose your own memory. But the generations who are born afterwards do not lose their memory of you.
Okay. Yeah.
This is what fame would mean to them.
All. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That really clarifies a lot of anxiety about it. Yeah. Thank you so much for that fabulous talk.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Gill. On behalf of everyone, I'd like to thank you for taking up time and giving this lecture on Greek and Roman mythology. We have a few questions lined up in the chat box. I'll just read them out.
Sure.
We cannot take up all the questions, but some of them we can do due to the time constraint which we have. This is one question about when the Greek gods themselves were more corrupt, then how can the humans who worship them could have derived appropriate and just way of living?
As I mentioned earlier, it's a worldview. Each society creates its own worldview. In India, for instance, we have this belief in rebirth. So we feel that whatever we did not attain, achieve, the mistakes that we made in this birth, we'll be punished for them. And we will at one point achieve this state of non-existence, which is the moksha. That feels like hell to Greeks. Okay. Now the thing is that we have this conception of gods too. Ram Rajya is the ideal Rajya, where everything is supposed to be perfect. But remember, Ram is an avatar, he's partly human. He ends up suffering a lot. He is the one who has to give up his wife, not because he wanted to, but because Raj Dharma dictates. He is the one who is deprived of his children. So he's willing to make this sacrifice for humanity, which is how the New Testament sees it. Jesus is seen as the merciful, kind God. The God of Old Testament is arbitrary and capricious, just like the Greek gods. It is really a conception of society. So what we learn from this, how we interpret it, I interpret it, is that Greeks thought of gods as an extension of the world in which they lived. If the world is unfair and cruel, so would the gods be. They are just beings with great power over us. They are not necessarily better than us human beings. Okay, that is their perception of divinity. Someone who is great, who has enormous power, who controls our life, but who is not necessarily just and fair, because life is not just and fair. That's how Greeks think of it. I may have worked really hard all my life, but I end up suffering. And I feel that so-and-so, the other person who's had no difficulty in life, who's done all kinds of bad things, is so successful. But that is the reality of life. And Greek gods embody that reality. So if you think they're corrupt, Greeks will say that that is how life is. So the gods are merely a reflection of the arbitrariness, of the injustice and unfairness of life. That's how they would answer it.
Can I ask something?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I just wanted you to enlighten the point that you were mentioning to Rekha about, that forgetfulness that, when you give that penny, copper penny, so you forget, but the children do not.
No. Yeah.
What's the reason behind that? And the second is, you said that Achilles was dipped into nectar, except, his feet. So that saying, that term or that phrase, that Achilles heel.
Achilles, yeah.
Yeah, Achilles heel comes from that, and it's somewhat similar to the Indian, gods drinking amrit or nectar in the Samudra Manthan, and not one drop being given to the Rakshasas, so that they would not continue to live
right
the way they were doing earlier.
Yeah, because okay, when we read Greek mythology, now this is, my classes, my students are very familiar with the way I talk about Zeus. I really talk about them as if they were my neighbors and I knew them. So I just say, Zeus is a very, very unfair, dirty old goat. He has, affairs with all kinds of people. He's this and that. But, the thing about gods is that they're very, very jealous of their power. This whole thing, I don't know, has somebody read Symposium, Plato's Symposium?
Yes, I have.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So if you were to talk about Symposium, what does it tell us about the Greek gods and human beings? Because Symposium is supposed to be a discussion on the nature of love.
Right.
So
that is where my question came from, that he talks about the recollection of beauty and the wondrous beauty, etc. And of course, both in Symposium and Phaedrus, he's been very, very critical of other myths. And yet he talks about the myth of the soul. He talks about Eros as one of the gods, and then Aphrodite, etc. So there is an interesting combination of the fancies that he has created and decrying the myths at the same time.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you remember, one of the myths, I don't know who tells this, whether it's Aristophanes or somebody else, I don't remember the exact character's name. But at one point he describes the perception of love that that particular character is giving is that originally human beings used to have 4 arms, 4 legs.
Yeah, this is Aristophanes.
Aristophanes, yeah.
Yeah.
So I got that right at least.
Yeah.
Okay. So they had this, but this being that existed was a challenger to gods because it was very powerful. So what did the gods do? They cut it in two. And that is why human beings are forever looking for their other half.
Other half,
the
yeah.
other
Right.
half
Yeah.
who is missing, in order to gain the sense of completion. And hence all these dialogues in films, Hollywood and Hindi films about, you complete me, my soulmate, etc. They come from symposium. They don't know the origins of this. Of course, philosophers like you would definitely know it. I've only read it once, so my recollection is not the greatest. So what does that tell us? It tells us about the jealousy of gods. They are very careful. They absolutely want to maintain their supremacy over everything. And they would do anything to maintain it, including cutting this prototype of human beings into two. So the inherent cruelty and lack of justice and unfairness of these gods is constantly reinforced in Greek society. And what is it telling us? It tells us that this is how the Greek society saw life, universe, world, as being inherently unfair, cruel, capricious, arbitrary. And their gods are merely a reflection of that. Because somebody said, because gods are, why are they shown as corrupt? They're not corrupt. They're just unfair and cruel because that's how life is. And for Greeks, this was the truest reflection of life. I hope that sort of answers the question to some extent.
I can see the Prerna, Dr. Prerna, if you want to ask something, you can say. Dr. Prerna?
Can I just answer the question?
Yeah.
Just Ananya Pandey's question about Lokai. Now, Lokai is, he's a character of Norse mythology. He's not a part of Greek myths. Okay? So you are mixing myths at this point. Because Lokai belongs to Greek, not to Greek mythology, but to Norse mythology, Viking mythology, which is Danish, Swedish, etc. Greek mythology is different.
Ma'am, I have couple of questions are there. So very simple, but you may, I'm confused little. So what exactly myth is? Is it a reality? It's some, or it's a kind of lie? What exactly it
This is
is?
a very, very common debate about myths. Some people say they're fantasies, fiction. Some people say they are reality. The thing is, as I mentioned in the beginning, when you have oral narratives, I mean, think about it. Suppose you're sitting in a class. Carry out this experiment. I've done it. You whisper something in your student's ear, first student's ear, the one who is sitting next to the door of the room. You say something, okay? You say, myths are not facts, they are fictional, they are not real, they are incorrect. Suppose you say this and tell her to pass this message on to the next person. The next person passes it on to the third person. By the time you reach the last person in the class, I'm absolutely sure that the statement would have changed dramatically. Imagine that this is what happened to myths. In the beginning, they may have been based on some fact, some belief. And as generations passed, the mother told the story to her daughter and the daughter told it to her daughter. 500 generations, 100 generations, 70 generations passed. What do you think is going to happen to that narrative? That is
so myths, that means Greek mythology, they don't have any original text. Like Hindu mythology, at least we can say we have Vedas.
No. What I'm saying is that myths were born much before writing was invented in any culture, that includes India. Myths are older than all the written texts. So we have Hesiod compiling this in 8th century BCE. Homer doing it in 8th century BCE. But the myths may have started 1,000 years before that. So the myths in Hinduism may have started 5,000 years ago while they were compiled in Rig Veda 2,000 years ago. You get the point? This is a statement that applies to all ancient cultures.
Okay.
So myths are related to religion. They are, for example, I'll take another myth. The story of the Battle of Troy, the Iliad, is based on this myth that used to exist. And of course, it gets transmuted. It took 700 years for that story to be written down. And for 700 years, it was just a myth. And for the next 2,000 years, people will read it as some people say it's totally a fiction. Hai, you know, some people will say it's real. Just the way Mahabharata and Ramayana are debated. But 45 years ago, 30 years ago, we have people, archaeologists, digging northwestern Turkey and coming across a city which is 3,000 years old, which was burned 3,000 years ago. And it is now considered to be Troy. So after 3,000 years, apparently, we have learned that Troy was actually real. And that these are not myths. These are fact-based. So it's a difficult question to answer, but I'm just using these analogies to give you some support for the way I think. I think myths are invariably located in facts, but they constantly are changing, modifying elements, they are evolving, and elements of fantasy keep entering them.
Ma'am, this is one question. Are myths the same as the faith which an individual has? Like, can we relate myth to faith?
They're
If
very
yes,
closely
then
connected.
how can we do that?
They're very closely connected because, as I said, a lot of myths are really about rituals. So, for example, I gave you the example of, in Hindu marriage, what is the significance of Saptapadi? The सात फेरास.
Yeah.
पाणी ग्रहण जो हाथ में देते हैं, हाथ मतलब दुल्हन का हाथ दूल्हे के हाथ में फादर के थ्रू जाता है. All of these are rituals and they have a history. And myths actually explain those history. For example, something like, take something like Karwa Chauth. People read this story. Is it a real story? We don't know. Myth, again, we come back to myths, which explain the origin of this ritual.
But ma'am, in case of Hindu mythology, if you go by the Hindu mythology, there is an underlying morals always there within the Hindu mythology. So whether it is Vanigan or whatever concepts are there.
Every myth has it. Every
okay,
myth.
Greek mythology. But then you said they don't believe in the concept of hell and heaven.
Yeah.
So then how do they justify the concept of rebirth?
Because this is how they want to explain, you are philosophers, you know it better than me. Think of existentialism. What does Sartre say about human life? In some senses, it will be a lot closer to ancient Greeks than to Christianity or Romans. Because what they are saying is that this is the only thing that is definite, that we are alive today. What happens to me after death is not something that I know anything about, or nor does anyone I know knows anything about it. So on what basis do I decide? I will die, this body will die. Apparently there is something called a spirit, which is formless, shapeless, which doesn't have material substance. That may exist. But it will not be as me because my identity is embedded in my physical presence. And that physical presence will cease to exist the day I die. So then Greek conception would be that after death, then what is there after death? Possibly nothing. But it does not mean, for example, we have this belief in reincarnation. It's a comforting belief. When we lose someone dear to us, we have this faith that one of these days we will meet them. For example, in my family, one of my aunts passed away. 9 months after her death, her granddaughter was born. The family is convinced that she's come back. So this comforts us. Greeks don't have that kind of comforting philosophy. It's a difficult truth to believe, but that's what they believe in.
Ma'am, there's this question. Ma'am, how would Greek mythology approach the conflict which is there between free will and destiny?
Yeah, eternal question.
Yeah.
Definitely in Christianity as well as in Greek myths. The thing is that Greeks believe in free will because they say that gods, for example, I'll give you this example. At one point, Achilles is about to kill Agamemnon because both of them have this massive fight right at the beginning of the Iliad and they are about to kill each other. Achilles, of course, is more powerful. I mean, he may not be as great as, politically as Agamemnon is, but physically he's more powerful. So he takes out his sword and is about to kill him. And we see Athena appear. As I told you, Greek gods are omnipresent, omnipotent. Athena appears and she says, Achilles, think before you do so. Would you be willing to risk it? Do you think what it means? If you kill the commander of this army, Greeks will have to leave the battle and Trojans will automatically win it. Are you willing to take the risk? Achilles stops. The choice is Achilles. Athena doesn't hold his arm back. Athena is really what we call the externalization of the human mind. She's the goddess of wisdom after all. All of us don't we have this debate? When we are going to do something, don't we think, am I doing something right? यार confusion चल रही है. Confusion क्यों चल रही है? क्योंकि दिमाग के में different ideas आ रहे हैं simultaneously. So the sane idea is Athena. But she's not holding Achilles' arms back. She's not stopping him from killing Agamemnon. She's merely asking him to think and reflect. The choice is Achilles'. That always exists.
Jayanti, I think Dr. Nivedita had 2 questions.
Yes, ma'am, we have asked.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that there is, Sulabna, if you can see that there is a question that are Greeks depressed about life or Vedics are too optimistic?
I mean, again, my question is, you think I'm being sort of flippant. I wish I knew. I would have enjoyed having a nice chat with Greeks, ancient Greeks. Unfortunately, we don't. These are conjectures. I don't find them depressed at all. I mean, they're just like human beings. In fact, if you read Aristophanes' plays, they are the most rollickingly funny, humorous, scurrilous plays that you will ever read. Nobody can match his plays. He's hugely entertaining. I'm very fond of Homer because Homer is possibly the kindest, the most generous, and the most fair writer. He is so good to the enemies. He's so fair to both sides. So these Greeks, I have a very high regard for their art, for their literature, and of course for their philosophy. So it would be nice if we could discuss these questions with them, but we can't, and the rest are just conjectures. My interpretation of texts.
What about Zeus?
Zeus?
Ma'am,
Zeus
we'll
as a
take a
character.
few more questions. One more question, ma'am, has come up. So when free will is there, then what about divine will or rita or hukum? Is one question.
The divine, okay, it's the fate, there are the fates. And in fact, in Greek mythology, fates are other than Olympians. They are primeval. They go beyond the Olympians. Even the Olympians do not dare to flout the fates. So, for example, there is the story in the Iliad again, where one of Zeus's human mortal sons, called Sarpedon, is about to be killed. So he says, my son is going to be killed. I don't want him to. I love him. I don't want him to die. I feel like letting him escape from the battlefield. So Hera says, do it. But don't forget, you are flouting the fate. According to fate, he should die today. And if you do so, then other gods will also make demands about their human children, and that will disturb the balance of the universe. So fate exists, but human beings always have a choice. The gods know the choice they will make, but they generally don't interfere. That's what I have to say.
Ma'am, I'd like to ask something.
Yes.
Should I
please.
go ahead?
Yes, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Okay. This is not from a philosophical point of view, it's more of historical. Is it a mere coincidence that the Indian and Greek myths are so similar, but or will like is it like a just a coincidence, or will like enough research show that one of them is like like inspired from the other, or during the Indo-Greek war did they like exchange their legends, their stories? Is it possible that that happened? Because Greek Indo war happened in the 180 BC, and
323.
they
323.
started from the 180 BC and then it continued.
Yeah, basically, Alexander came to India in 320.
Yes, ma'am. And in 31,000 BCE was the Greek myths had started like being recorded with dates and everything. So is it possible that is it just a coincidence,
Okay,
or
so
we actually have some
actually,
connection with them?
okay, this is something. There's a very well-known. His name is George Fraser. He's one of the anthropology as a discipline came into existence about 120, 30 years ago. So Fraser wrote this book called The Golden Bough, Bough, The Golden Bough. And The Golden Bough is a comparative study of the ancient myths of some cultures, ancient cultures, Egyptian, Greek, Roman, Indian, and Babylonian, and I think Chinese. And he makes this, ultimately, when you look at it, Indra is the king of gods in Hindu mythology. He is the god of sky. He's the god of rains, just like Zeus. So Fraser basically took up the fertility myths in all these different cultures and studied them and created this notion that they are similar. And the reason for that could be because most of them were agrarian societies. And because the circumstances were somewhat similar, that's why they thought like that. Now, Fraser has totally been discredited in the past 50 years. So you decide what you want to believe.
So we should just accept that it's a mere coincidence.
You can always do a study. I would definitely buy the book and read it.
Sure,
but
ma'am, I'll look
any
into it.
particular
Thank you.
reason why Jeetu he's been discredited, Fraser?
They felt that these are sort of simplistic because okay, the thing about, as all of us know with research, when too broad a generalization is not generally a very good idea when it comes to research, because there may be some similarity in one particular subset of myths in some of these cultures. But to proclaim that all myths of all these cultures are the same is absolutely not, sort of acceptable statement to make from the scholarly context. But do read this book. It's a beautiful book with absolutely fabulous illustrations. So read this book. It's Golden Bough. It's available. You can check it. It's written about 100 years ago. You can find it.
Thank you, ma'am.
And the Golden Bough itself, the term itself comes from Virgil's Aeneid. So it's.
But ma'am, when we do a comparative study between Greek and Indians, and though we find that there are many things that are similar, but again that the space and time is important, and their thinking process and our thinking process, understanding, like suppose take for the example the Parmenid's notion, concept of being. And if we go by Advait analysis of the concept of self as an ontological concept, so you find entirely two different kinds of thinking process are there. So though it seems to be that he said being as eternal, permanent, everlasting, and indestructible. So the same kind of word we have used in case of Atma, that Atma is eternal, permanent, everlasting. But the way we understood Atma and the way they understood the notion of being are totally different.
Yes, I would agree. Because the way they interpret their worldview is very different from the Indian. Theirs is a more bleak worldview. There is no doubt about it. And I think I just happened to see some statement being made about Zeus marrying Hera. Isn't that incest? It is. But remember, when they visualize this world, there is no one else to marry. They're all children of the same parents, and there is no one else. Okay. Yes. So I would agree with that. The thing about Greeks is that the way I understand it, and of course my understanding is sort of more literature based than philosophical. You know, there may have been other schools of philosophy. We don't know if any texts written by them survive. Because Greek philosophy is not monolithic at all. So we don't know. Because, you know, there is a particular poet, for example, the only woman poet of the ancient world, Sappho. Very little is known about her because all the works written by Sappho were burnt, deliberately burnt in the 4th century CE by the church fathers because they were considered to be degenerate. So philosophers like that may have been, their works may have been destroyed. Who knows? We have no idea.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And Sulagna, who is going to?
Thank you, ma'am. So we'll not be able to take any more
1
questions
minute,
now.
Sulagna, I'll just confirm the title of the book. I just looked it up, Jitu. It says The Golden Bough, A Study in Magic and Religion.
It's actually about fertility myths. It studies fertility myths in all these cultures.
Okay, because I think it was written, probably first published, like you mentioned, it's in 1890.
He's one of the early anthropologists, one of the earliest anthropologists who start publishing. There are 3 or 4 of them. And, you know, this is actually a very important text because we read it in the context of 20th century literature. There is also Jessie Westerns from Ritual to Romance. She's also an anthropologist studying something similar and reaching a different conclusion.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, Sulagna, please carry on.
Thank you, students. Thank you, participants, for all the questions. I'm sure there are many more questions which we'd like to ask, but we don't have time due to the time constraint. We have to stop here now. I'd request Upendra to take over from here.
Hello. Good afternoon. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, audible.
Thank you all. Madam has gone through lack of historicity is called myth. Lack of historicity is called myth. I mean, recorded history is not there. That is myth. And Madam has also gone through Roman mythology, Greek mythology, nature of God, types of God, name of God, and we have seen also pictures of God and goddess. And she has also mentioned that God is not only look like human beings, but behave like human beings. I mean, act like human beings. And God is omnipotent, omniscient, and omnipresent. And she has also gone through myth are the source of Greek philosophy, Greek thought. And Greek philosophy is a foundation of all Western philosophies, like modern Western philosophy, modern philosophy, postmodern philosophy, analytic philosophy, existential philosophy. So Greek philosophy is a very important philosophy for all philosophies. And ma'am has also gone through Homer and Odyssey. And God is very much abstract in nature. Nirakar, जो मैडम ने बताया, that is there in Plato's philosophy also, because that is abstract, that is transcendent, that is not immanent, that is conceptual reality. God is also there. And while we go through research, we are also having research. When we are doing research, we go through literature review. In that, we are discussing about historicity as well as myths. Both are important for research also. So, but philosophy, ma'am has gone through literature, and we are also discussing in Greek philosophy through concepts. So now, under vote of thanks, first of all, I thank Principal of JDMC, Professor Swati Pal, who always encouraging all the teachers to organize conference, seminar, workshop, and many more creative activities in the college. We all are very happy, ma'am, to have such a true academician. Our special thanks goes to Professor Gill, ma'am, for delivering a very thought-provoking lecture on Greek and Roman mythology. Ma'am has gone through each and every detail about the topic, which is definitely very useful for all the teachers as well as students. After a very long time, I got an opportunity to listen such a great lecture. I found everything is connected to Greek philosophy, and we also know that Greek philosophy is a very important philosophy for all Western philosophies, whether that is German, French, modern, postmodern, Western philosophy, or analytic, continental. We are grateful to organizing committee, TIC Dr. Jayanti ma'am, senior faculty of the department, Dr. Sudhnya ma'am, Dr. Himanshu ma'am, Dr. Sipu Jaiswal has organized such a very important program. Equally thankful to program coordinator Dr. Vel Murugan, Dr. Sulagna Pal, and students coordinator Ashika, Anushka, Aishwarya, Devyani, Isika. We all are thankful to all students, participants for the lecture. I thank all the members of the faculty as well as students who extended their cooperation and helping hand throughout. Thank you, madam. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thanks
you.
for a
Pleasure was mine.
excellent lecture. And I still have many doubts, but I'll maybe
I think we
one more
should
session.
organize Jayanti
Jayanti
follow-up lecture.
I want to say one thing for Jitendra ma'am. Is a compliment for her. Me and my brother was listening to her, and my brother was saying that ma'am का अंग्रेजी तो इतना अच्छा है, जैसे स्मूथ और हिंदी जैसे समझ में आता है. तो हम लोग सब हिंदी बैकग्राउंड से हैं मैम, लेकिन आपका लेक्चर इतना सरल और सुगढ़ था कि हम पूरा सुने और हमें बहुत अच्छा लगा मैम. थैंक यू सो मच.
Thank you very much.
Yes, no, thanks a
very
lot.
kind of
And
you.
like Jayanti was saying, Jitu, I think we should have lecture number 2 in this series so that we can come equipped with some of our questions and have
Ma'am,
such
one more
philosophers.
Jitendra ma'am, one more information, like all over India, participants are there.
Yes.
So people who are doing yoga workshop, they have also joined. There are many professors, doctors,
truly honored.
and many people I can see
I'm
that.
honored and very grateful
And,
to all of them.
Thank you. Thank you all the participants. And
yes, thanks a lot, Dr. Gill,
You're
to the entire Philosophy department, and of course to Professor Pal, our principal. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank
We will request Dr.
Yes,
Gill to enlighten us on monthly basis. Once a month we can have this session.
डॉक्टर अरोड़ा हम वैसे ही बातचीत कभी भी कर सकते हैं.
जी हम सब मिलकर करें ना तो 100
बिल्कुल.
लोग बेनिफिट करेंगे.
बिल्कुल.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye.
Jayanti, we should leave now. Wait for some time.
Yes, we can wait for maybe 5 minutes.
Okay. Maybe we teachers can wait and the rest everybody can leave. Yeah?
Yes.
Yes.
I actually saw this book. I think we should tell Nivedita to get it for the library.
Yeah, that will be
Ma'am,
good.
it has got different volumes.
No, but the one that I'm looking at, Sulagna, it says that it's been, all the volumes have been abridged in this one.
Okay.
It's a paperback and Atlantic distributors do sell that book. And they said that it says that it was first published in 1890 and it was 12-volume edition, which was abridged in 1922 by the author and his wife.